So having gone through your own set of adversity, can you talk a little bit about, is adversity required for success, and how do we know how much adversity is good? Because I'm assuming that there's a level, right, where if you're only going through adverse situations, probably won't end up uh, end up well for you. But if you go through too little adversity, that's probably also not a good thing. So how do we deal with that? And then maybe also bringing up the story of the caterpillar would help illustrate some of those points.
Yes. Well, you don't have to go looking for adversity. It's all around you. We have this, and Joseph Campbell talked about it in The Power of Myth. Every moment we have to decide, what are we going to do? What choices are we going to make? And so for me, what I noticed is, and I learned this when I was in school and we used to be in the science lab, and I know they didn't do it, but we used to have these Bunsen burners, and you had these little glass beacons, and you'd have water in it or whatever, and they'd have a Bunsen burner be under it, and making it hot. And the idea is that if you put a frog in there and you keep the flame low, frog will stay in there and boil and roast. But if you turn the flame up high, that frog would jump out of there. And so I think that's a metaphor for us. You're going to go through struggle, even if you just think about the idea that you get born, and when you're born, you're totally helpless. You need others around you. You can't avoid feeling powerless and alone. And you get older, you age, and you get sick, and you die. I mean, life is suffering. You're going to have adversity, but the question is whether you see the adversity as a roadblock or you turn it into a stepping stone. And so there's all of these in my book. We talked about it. No struggle, no swag. You have to struggle. Even you struggle as a baby in the birth trauma, just coming out of the womb, you struggle. So life, but it's this thing about, if you're looking for struggle, and some people look for struggle, but they don't call it struggle, they call it challenges. And so we have this idea of no, but if you don't have anything that you're interested in, and I would say we spend most of our time between anxiety and boredom. And we're bored when we have high skills and knowledge and experience, but we're not challenged. And we're anxious when we're challenged beyond our perceived capacity. So we have to be able to, if you learn something, if you want to grow, you got to be out of your comfort zone. So you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. So adversity means many things to different people. It could be people, places, and things, or it could be the challenges or the conflicts we have inside of us. And the idea is, like in my first book, The Mindful Athlete, I called it AOF motivation. And I don't know if you're familiar with that term, AOF. You have any idea what I mean by that?
I think
That
I've heard.
means
Yeah.
it means ass on fire.
Yeah.
Just like that punch. If you don't have initially for me, I got clean and sober coming up on 40 years in July because my ass was on fire. And some people, you would look at them and say, well, their ass should be on fire, but it's not. So you have to get to a place where you say, it's like what was sometimes referred to, or at least in my time, it was referred to as bottom, getting rock bottom, where you can't keep doing what you're doing and you can't not do what you're doing. And you get to a place where you just have to say, I'm powerless and I have to let go. I have to let go, let God, or just trust the process and stop trying to think my way into proper behavior, but actually behave my way into proper thinking, or just doing what they tell me to do, and then see what happens. But to get out of that place of, if I stay here and if I keep doing what I'm doing, and this is on any level, whether it's adversity or just excellence, if you're trying to move to another level, if I keep doing what I'm doing, I'm going to keep getting what I'm getting. So I have to change what I'm doing if I want something different. And you talked a little bit when we talked about responsibility. We have self-awareness. But first of all, we have a masterpiece. We have this tremendous potential inside of us that we can access. Number two. Number three, only we can access it. And number four, the quality of our life is going to be reflection on how much of that we embrace and say yes to. And so in my book, Unlocked, I talk about embrace the greatness, find the flow, discover success. But we have to acknowledge that we have free will. We can decide what to focus on. We can decide how to interpret something. Because we have self-awareness and we make choices, whether we choose to or not, we have this ability, and that especially if we can create space between stimulus and response, and a lot of the processes I talk about in Unlock and Mindful Athlete is about how to create space between stimulus and response. And in that space, Viktor Frankl said, we have the freedom and power to choose, but you don't have to believe him. You can just try it yourself. And so this idea of being mindful or having mirror mind or being able to observe experience uncritically, non-reactively, we get the intel we need. And then based on what goals, what core values, or what ideas or ideals we want to live up to, we can choose in alignment with that. But a lot of us don't know we have choice, that we're making choices. And so that's why the examined life is the only life worth living, because if you don't, we learn from true understanding comes from reflecting on experience. And so in sports, what's great about sports is a lot of things, but the main thing is we have a beginning, a middle, and an end. If you play basketball, you got four, you're playing in the pros, you got 4 quarters, and they're 12 minutes long. And even in football, you have you have 4 quarters, and then you have the 2-minute drill, and you have all of these other things. And it's amazing that there's so many touchdowns scored at the 2-minute drill at halftime and at the end of the game than most of the other game. It's because we get locked in. There's a sense of urgency, and we have a plan that we're going to follow, and then we just get locked in and we kind of do it.
I wanted to go back to something you said earlier about the self-realization, and I'd say a lot of people are probably in situations where they're not happy. You mentioned boredom, and then you also mentioned this willingness to change and understanding that if you keep doing the same, if you keep giving your life the same inputs, you will get the same outputs. But what I'm curious is, how do people actually get to that level of self-realization to understand that they might be in a situation where they're unhappy? Because I would argue that most people go on about their lives almost like robots, right? They have these set, things that they do each and every day without not much intention behind the actions that they take. But yet they're unhappy with their lives. So what are some techniques or some things that you've learned to help people reach that level of self-realization to make a change?
Well, you have to have a sense of urgency. So I talked about, ass on fire, but now I don't get motivated so much by that. I get motivated by pursuing excellence and wisdom with grace and ease, or realizing that if I don't want what I'm getting, then I have to be willing, ready, willing, and able to do something differently. And usually that means changing my view of what's possible for me. And so once again, I don't know how you get there without a sense of urgency, because we in my book I talk about it. Uh, uh, there's a book called The Way of Man, and Martin Buber talks about this idea that we all have a divine spark that's encrusted in a shell, and we have a system of hideouts. So we hide from ourselves, and he uses the Bible when God is asking Adam, Adam, wherefore art thou? And he's not asking him where he is physically. He's asking him, you've had 35 years or so allotted to your life. What have you done for it? You have to take responsibility for what you've done. And so uh, Eric Fromm wrote a book called Escape from Freedom. So we have these mechanisms of escape or hiding out. And so when they ask, because when God asked him, wherefore art thou, and he hid himself, we thought he was hiding himself from God, but he can't do that. But when you hide yourself from God, you're hiding yourself from yourself. And so it's the idea of the first step is, I hid myself, and then take responsibility and say, I have this ability, but escape from freedom. Well, I'm escaping from freedom through authoritarianism or just conforming and not really going inside, because we're thinking everything's out here, and being my unique self. That all of us are a unique self. It's like snowflakes. There's only one of us, and our job is to embrace that and to know it so we can express it and share it with others. And so that's what the challenge is. And why is that so important? And I go back to philosopher Soren Kierkegaard. In 1846, he had this idea. He talked about, I don't necessarily have a coin with me, but he said freedom and potentiality is one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is uncertainty, anxiety. And this is what Eric Fromm said. He said, if we change anything, even if we change when we brush our teeth, it mobilizes anxieties. That's the thing. So we don't talk about it. And you know what Kierkegaard called it? He called it the alarming possibility of being able. That's it. But Viktor Frankl talked about it when he talked about this idea that this is where we are, this is where we're going, and in between there's tension. And so you have this idea, positive psychology is great, but to say that you're not going to suffer, you're not going to have some discomfort, that's just not realistic. And so you can call that stress, you can call that tension, whatever. It doesn't matter what you call it. It has to be endured. And this is what Eric Fromm was saying about when you change something and the anxieties get mobilized, they're to be embraced and work, and you just work through it. You walk through it and you get stronger. But if you don't do that, and if you avoid it, you hide out and you deny and blame, then it could become neurotic or psychotic. But you experience anxiety. It's there. It's part of life. But if you can embrace it and notice that it's teaching you, if anything, it's telling you you're out of your comfort zone. And it's because the reality is that the future is unknown. But we don't act like that. We don't act like you're going to get old, you're going to die, you're going to get sick. We don't act like that. So when somebody dies or gets sick or gets old, we act like it's not supposed to happen, but it is. But it's happening. And so if you embrace it, then it's like you're going to die or you're going to lose what you have. That you have to keep reinventing yourself because that's how I won't say matriculate, but that's how we evolve. Evolution is about if you don't change, you become extinct. You might say. You get what I'm saying? So this is a much deeper question. So when we ask these questions, why do people do that? You have to go into the individual. But I would say from my own experience and from being a human being and what is required, what has to be overcome to actualize or to realize that you have the potential inside, you have to be willing to look at it and deal with the discomfort. So once again, in my book, The Mindful Athlete, I talk about, and I think I talk about it Unlock as well, you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And so anytime you grow, to learn something means you don't just take in facts, you actually change. It actually changes how you're approaching life or how you're doing something. So to know and not to act is not to know. So when you know something, you got to show you know. If that makes sense. And so now it's a totally different thing. But we don't have that around us. We don't have anybody that says, well, okay, so you might not be good in math or English, but you have, you have this, spatial intelligence, or you have this, emotional intelligence, or you have spiritual intelligence. You have some other intelligence that you can pursue. We have one size fits all and say, oh, you should be like Johnny or be like Mary. Instead of saying, no, you should be yourself. And that means that you're going to have to do a lot of self-study because a lot of this stuff is just fit for one size. It's almost like a assembly line. But the reality is each person has to take responsibility for themselves and realize that I have everything I need to succeed, but it's an inside job.